The church fell silent. Everyone could feel it, that strange electric moment when something impossible happens. Marcus stood at the altar, his hands trembling as he slowly removed the dark glasses he'd worn for 15 years. His eyes, once clouded and unseeing, now blinked rapidly, adjusting to a world of color and light that had been denied to him since the accident. The experimental surgery had worked, though his doctors had given it only a small chance of success. Now, on his wedding day of all days, vision was flooding back into his world. But it wasn't the ornate church decorations or the hundreds of guests that captured his attention. It was her Zara, his bride. The woman whose voice had been his anchor, whose laugh had painted pictures in his darkness, whose touch had guided him through a world he couldn't see. Now, for the first time, he was seeing the woman he had fallen in love with through every sense except sight. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Tears streamed down his face as he took in her radiant dark skin, her expressive brown eyes, the elegant features that had been only a mystery described by others, the stunning white dress that complemented her beautiful complexion. She was more breathtaking than his mind had ever managed to imagine. And in that moment, as recognition, shock, and overwhelming love flooded his face, whispers began to ripple through the church. Because Marcus Thornfield, the billionaire tech mogul whose family had built their empire in a small, traditional southern town, had never told anyone except his closest confidants that the woman he was marrying was black. Not his extended family, not his father's old business partners, not the society pages that had speculated endlessly about the mysterious woman who had captured the heart of America's most eligible blind bachelor. And now, as vision returned to him in this most public moment, the shock on his face was being misinterpreted by hundreds of watching eyes. What was actually a moment of transcendent joy, seeing his beautiful bride for the very first time, looked to many like something else entirely. Zara's smile began to falter as she watched the whispers spread. This was supposed to be the happiest day of their lives. But suddenly it felt like everything they'd built together might crumble before they could even say "I do." "Mr. Thornfield, your 10 o'clock appointment is here." Marcus nodded in the direction of his assistant's voice. "Thank you, James. Please show them in." He sat behind his desk, back straight, fingers lightly resting on the smooth surface of his desk. Everything in his office was arranged with precise measurements. Marcus could navigate the space with confidence, knowing exactly how many steps it took to reach the door, the window, the bookshelf. At 35, Marcus Thornfield had been blind for 15 years, since the boating accident in his early 20s that had taken his sight but spared his life. The accident had occurred just as he was taking over his father's technology company, transforming it from a regional business into what was now Thornfield Innovations, a multi-billion-dollar enterprise specializing in adaptive technologies. The irony wasn't lost on him, a blind man running a company that created tools for those with disabilities. But Marcus had turned his disability into his greatest strength, understanding the needs of his consumers in a way his competitors never could. He heard the door open, followed by footsteps set heavy and familiar James, and another lighter, more tentative. A woman's steps. "Mr. Thornfield, this is Miss Zara Williams from Williams Design Firm," James announced. "Thank you, James. Ms. Williams, please have a seat." The footsteps approached, and he heard the subtle sound of someone settling into the chair across from him. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Thornfield," came a voice that immediately captured his attention. It was melodic and warm, with a slight huskiness that suggested laughter was never far away. "The pleasure is mine," Marcus replied, finding himself smiling. "I understand you're here to discuss redesigning our workspace?" "Yes," Zara replied. Your board reached out about creating a more accessible environment for all employees. I specialize in universal design that works for people of all abilities. I've heard excellent things about your work, Marcus said. The project at the Smithsonian received quite a bit of praise. You've done your homework, she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. I always do, he responded, especially when it comes to someone who'll be redesigning my daily environment. I've learned that the world isn't built for people like me. Small changes can make the difference between independence and frustration. That's exactly my philosophy, Zara said, excitement evident in her voice. Most designers focus on making spaces look good. I believe spaces should work well for everyone first, then look good second. For the next hour, they discussed ideas for the office redesign. Marcus found himself increasingly impressed with Zara's knowledge and approach. She asked thoughtful questions about his experience navigating the space, never making assumptions or speaking to him with the condescending tone many adopted when they realized he was blind. You know, he said as their meeting was winding down, most designers come in here with elaborate visual presentations they forget I can't see. Zara laughed, a genuine, warm sound that seemed to fill the room. I brought tactile models, she said, and detailed descriptions I can read to you. The visual renderings are on a tablet for your team, but I figured you and I could work with something more hands-on. Marcus raised his eyebrows, genuinely surprised. That's refreshingly considerate. It's not consideration, it's common sense, Zara replied matter-of-factly. What good is my presentation if the client can't access it? Would you like to feel the models now? Please, Marcus said, extending his hands. He felt something solid, but lightweight, placed in his palms. His fingers moved over it, recognizing the scale model of what must be the office floor. This is the current layout, Zara explained. And this, she guided his hands to another model, is what I'm proposing. Marcus explored the model, noting the subtle changes that would make navigation easier, consistent pathways, textured flooring to indicate transitions, strategic placement of furniture to create clear walkways. You've really thought this through, he said, genuinely impressed. That's my job, she replied simply. Now, if you approve the concept, I can have detailed plans drawn up by next week. I think we should discuss this further, Marcus said, making a quick decision. Are you free for lunch? There was a brief pause before Zara responded. I am, but is this a business lunch or something else, Mr. Thornfield? Marcus appreciated her directness. Initially business, he admitted, but I find your perspective refreshing, and I'd like to continue our conversation in a less formal setting, if that makes you uncomfortable. It doesn't, Zara interrupted. I just like clarity. Lunch sounds great. And with that simple exchange, something shifted between them. Neither could have predicted how that first meeting would change both their lives forever. The restaurant Marcus had chosen was one of his favorites, a small Italian place where the owner, Giuseppe, knew him well enough to provide menus in Braille and guide him to his table without making a fuss. Your usual spot, Mr. Thornfield, Giuseppe said, leading them to a quiet corner table. Thank you, Marcus replied. Once they were seated, he asked Zara, Is the lighting all right for you? I'm told this corner is a bit dim. It's perfect, Zara assured him. Very cozy. There was a moment of silence, and Marcus could sense Zara observing him. You're wondering why I asked about the lighting when I can't see it, he said with a small smile. I was, she admitted. Just because something doesn't affect me directly doesn't mean I shouldn't consider how it affects others, he explained. A lesson many people could stand to learn. That's a good philosophy, Zara said, sounding thoughtful. The waiter arrived to take their orders. Marcus ordered without needing the menu read to him. He knew it by heart. So, he said once they were alone again, tell me about yourself, Miss Williams. How did you get into universal design? Please, call me Zara, she said. And it's a personal story, actually. My younger brother has cerebral palsy. Growing up, I watched him struggle with environments that didn't accommodate his needs. I promised myself I'd help create a world that worked better for him. Marcus nodded, feeling an immediate connection. That's how the best innovations happen, from personal necessity. What about you? Zara asked. Your company was already successful before your accident, but you've taken it in a completely different direction since then. Marcus leaned back slightly. Most people were too intimidated to ask directly about his blindness. When I lost my sight, I gained perspective, he said. Before, I was creating technology because it was interesting and profitable. After, I realized technology should solve real problems. The accident forced me to reevaluate everything. That couldn't have been easy, Zara said softly. It wasn't, Marcus admitted. For the first year, I was angry at the world. I had to relearn everything: how to dress myself, how to eat without making a mess, how to run a company without being able to read reports or see people's expressions. But you did it, Zara observed. I had no choice, Marcus said with a small shrug. I could either adapt or surrender. I'm not the surrendering type. Their food arrived, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Marcus discovered that Zara had a dry wit that often caught him by surprise, making him laugh more than he had in years. She was well-read, passionate about architecture, and had strong opinions about everything from politics to pasta. So, Zara said as they were finishing their meal, back to business. What aspects of the design are most important to you personally? Marcus appreciated that she was still focused on work, despite the casual setting. Consistency, he answered without hesitation. When you can't see, you rely on memory and patterns. Moving a trash can 3 feet can ruin my entire day. That makes sense, Zara said. What else? Sound matters, he continued. Open concept offices are a nightmare for someone like me. Too many overlapping conversations, no walls to orient myself with. I need spaces with good acoustic design. I noticed your current office has a lot of hard surfaces, Zara commented. That must create terrible echoes. It does, Marcus confirmed, impressed by her observation. They continued discussing the project, but the conversation kept drifting to personal topics. Marcus found himself telling Zara stories he rarely shared with anyone about the early days after his accident, about his strained relationship with his father before his death, about his dreams for the future. As they were waiting for the check, Zara asked, "Do you mind if I ask a personal question?" "You've been asking personal questions all afternoon," Marcus pointed out with a smile. "Go ahead." "Do you ever?" She hesitated, then continued. "Do you ever think about the possibility of regaining your sight? I've read about experimental treatments." Marcus grew serious. "I did. For the first few years. I consulted specialists all over the world. The consensus was that my optic nerve damage was too severe. After a while, I had to accept this as my reality. Building a life around false hope isn't living." "I understand," Zara said. "I didn't mean to bring up a painful subject." "It's not painful anymore," Marcus assured her. "Just part of my story. What about you? Any painful parts to your story I should know about?" Zara was quiet for a moment. "Some," she finally admitted, "but those are at least second-date stories." Marcus felt his heart rate quicken. "Is that what this is? A first date? I thought it was a business lunch that turned more personal than expected," Zara replied. "But if you're asking if I'd be open to a proper date, the answer is yes." Marcus couldn't help the smile that spread across his face. "Then I'd like to ask you to dinner, Zara Williams. Not to discuss office redesigns or accessibility features. Just dinner, between two people who'd like to know each other better." "I'd like that," Zara said, and the warmth in her voice told Marcus she was smiling too. Neither of them knew it then, but that lunch was the beginning of something neither had been looking for, but both had been waiting for their entire lives. Over the next several months, Marcus and Zara's relationship blossomed in ways neither had anticipated. Their professional collaboration gave them plenty of excuses to spend time together, but it quickly became clear that work was just a pretext. On their third date, Marcus took Zara to a symphony. Classical music had become one of his greatest pleasures. After losing his sight, the complex layers of sound created a rich experience that didn't require vision to appreciate. "I've never really listened to classical music like this before," Zara whispered, as they sat in the concert hall before the performance began. "Most people don't listen," Marcus replied. "They hear, but they don't listen. Close your eyes when the music starts. You'll experience it differently." When the orchestra began playing Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto, Marcus reached over and gently took Zara's hand. They sat that way through the entire performance, connected by touch as the music surrounded them. Afterward, as they walked arm in arm to the waiting car, Zara said, "You were right. With my eyes closed, I could follow each instrument individually. It was like seeing with my ears." Marcus smiled. "That's how I experience the world now. My other senses compensate. I don't see faces, but I recognize voices instantly. I can't read body language, but I hear the subtle changes in breathing or tone that tell me someone is nervous, excited, or lying." "What do you hear when I speak?" Zara asked, her voice soft. Marcus turned toward her, his face serious. "I hear confidence, intelligence, kindness, and lately," he paused, "I hear something else. Something warm when you say my name." "You're very perceptive," Zara said, her voice carrying that very warmth he'd described. "It's not perception," Marcus said. "It's attention. I pay attention to you, Zara." Their fourth date was Zara's idea hands-on sculpture exhibit, where touching the art wasn't just allowed but encouraged. "This is incredible," Marcus said as his fingers traced the curves of a marble piece. "You can feel the artist's intention in every cut and curve." "I thought you'd appreciate it," Zara said. "Art shouldn't be just for those who can see." It was on their seventh date that Marcus first kissed her. They had been cooking dinner together at his penthouse apartment, or rather, Zara was cooking while Marcus helped with tasks he could manage confidently. She was teaching him to make her grandmother's gumbo, guiding his hands as he chopped vegetables. "Smaller pieces," she instructed, her hands over his on the knife. "Like this." Marcus was acutely aware of her presence behind him, her breath warm against his neck. When they finished chopping, she moved away to check on the roux simmering on the stove. "It smells amazing," Marcus said, moving carefully in the direction of her voice. "It's all about patience," Zara replied. "You can't rush a good roux." "Some things are worth waiting for," Marcus said, finding the counter edge and leaning against it. He was close enough now to smell her perfume, something subtle with notes of vanilla and jasmine. "Some things are," Zara agreed, her voice closer than he'd expected. Marcus reached out carefully, his fingers finding her arm, then moving up to her shoulder. "May I?" he asked. "Yes," she whispered. His hands gently explored her face, the curve of her cheekbones, the softness of her lips, the texture of her hair. It was the way he came to know faces now, creating a mental image through touch. "I wish I could see you," he said softly, "but this is its own kind of seeing." Then he leaned forward and kissed her, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence as she responded. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "The roux," Zara suddenly remembered, turning quickly back to the stove. Marcus laughed. "Is it ruined?" "No," Zara said, the sound of a wooden spoon scraping the pot accompanying her words. "It's actually perfect. Dark roux has the best flavor." "See? Some things do get better when you're not watching them too closely," Marcus teased. That evening marked a turning point in their relationship. The professional pretense fell away completely, and they began spending nearly all their free time together. Zara didn't just adapt to Marcus's blindness, she embraced it as part of who he was. She described things to him in ways that engaged all his other senses. When they walked through a park, she wouldn't just say, "The trees are beautiful," she would say, "The maple leaves are turning that fiery red that matches the sound of the crisp leaves crunching under our feet." For his part, Marcus found in Zara someone who saw past his wealth and his disability to the man beneath. She challenged him intellectually, made him laugh, and brought warmth into his carefully ordered world. 3 months into their relationship, Marcus realized he was falling in love with her. The moment of clarity came on an ordinary Tuesday evening. They were sitting on his couch, Zara reading aloud from a book they'd both been interested in, her voice animated as she described the illustrations. It struck him suddenly that he couldn't imagine his life without her voice, her touch, her presence. It took him another month to tell her. They were at the beach. Zara had packed a picnic, and they sat on a blanket listening to the waves. Marcus loved the beach. The consistent sound of the surf helped him orient himself, and the feeling of sand between his toes grounded him in the moment. "The sun is setting," Zara described. "The sky is streaked with pink and orange, and the sun looks like a ball of fire sinking into the water." "I remember sunsets," Marcus said quietly. "I remember colors, though they're starting to fade in my memory." Zara squeezed his hand. "What do you miss seeing the most?" Marcus thought for a moment. "Faces," he finally said. "Particularly the faces of people I love." He turned toward her. "I wish I could see your face, Zara. I've created an image of you in my mind based on what my hands tell me, what others have described, but it's not the same." "Does it matter what I look like?" she asked, her voice carrying a note he couldn't quite interpret. "No," he said immediately. "It doesn't change how I feel. And how I feel, Zara, is in love with you. I love you. I love your mind, your heart, your voice, your touch. I love the person you are." There was a moment of silence, filled only by the sound of the waves and distant seagulls. "I love you too," Zara finally said, her voice thick with emotion. "I wasn't planning on this, you know. Especially not one as complicated as a blind billionaire." Marcus smiled. "I'm not that complicated. Just a man who happened to find the woman he wants to spend his life with." Zara was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "There's something I need to tell you, Marcus. Something about me that—" Marcus frowned slightly. "What is it?" "I'm black," Zara said simply. Marcus was silent for a moment. Then he started laughing softly. "I didn't think it was funny," Zara said, sounding puzzled. "It's not," Marcus assured her, getting his laughter under control. "It's just I've been trying to figure out why you sometimes get tense when we're out in public, or why the hostess at Giovanni's always sounds so surprised when we ask for a table. I thought maybe you were famous and trying to keep a low profile." "Not famous," Zara said. "Just black in spaces that don't see many black women, especially not with white men like me," Marcus finished for her. "Yes," Zara confirmed. "Does it matter to you?" Marcus reached for her hand. "The only thing that matters to me is who you are, Zara. Your race is part of your identity, yes, but it's just one part of the remarkable woman I've fallen in love with." "That's a good answer," Zara said, relief evident in her voice. "Did you think I'd feel differently?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious. "I didn't know," Zara admitted. "You're from an old Southern family. Your father's generation wasn't exactly known for progressive views on race." "My father and I disagreed on many things," Marcus said firmly. "That would have been one of them." He squeezed her hand. "I'm not my father, Zara. And my world has been dark for 15 years. The only colors that matter to me now are the ones in a person's character." Later that night, as they drove back to the city, Marcus asked the question that had been forming in his mind since their conversation on the beach. "Zara, Why didn't anyone tell me you were black before? Not that it matters, but people usually feel compelled to describe others in visual terms to me. Zara was quiet for a moment. I asked them not to, she finally said. Why? Marcus asked, genuinely curious. Because I wanted you to know me first, she explained. In my experience, once race enters the picture, it can change how people see everything else. I wanted us to connect as people before that layer was added. Marcus nodded slowly. I understand. But you know, one advantage of dating a blind man, I really do get to know people from the inside out. That's what I'm counting on, Zara said, and leaned her head against his shoulder for the rest of the drive home. 7 months into their relationship, Marcus decided to ask Zara to marry him. The decision wasn't impulsive. He had known for months that she was the one, but he wanted to be sure she felt the same certainty. He spent weeks planning the perfect proposal, wanting it to be an experience that engaged all the senses they shared. He enlisted the help of his assistant James, who had become a close friend over the years. Are you sure about this, sir? James asked as they finalized the arrangements. It's not that Miss Williams isn't wonderful, she is, but you've only known each other for a short time, and… He hesitated. And what, James? Marcus prompted, sensing his assistant's discomfort. There will be talk, James finally said. Your family name carries weight in this town, and some of the old guard won't be pleased. Because she's black? Marcus asked directly. Yes, sir, James admitted. I don't share those views, but I know they exist. Marcus's face hardened slightly. Let them talk. The Thornfield name has survived worse scandals than a man loving a woman whose skin color differs from his own. Of course, sir, James said quickly. I just wanted you to be prepared. I appreciate your concern, Marcus said, his expression softening. But the only person whose opinion matters to me is Zara's. Now, have you found the ring I described? Yes, sir. It's being delivered tomorrow. The ring was a unique design. Marcus had commissioned a platinum band, with a center sapphire, surrounded by small diamonds. He had chosen a sapphire because Zara once told him her favorite color was blue, like the ocean on a clear day. The proposal itself was set for the botanical gardens. Marcus had arranged for a private evening tour, with the entire conservatory lit by thousands of tiny lights. A string quartet would play, and the gardens would be filled with flowers chosen for their fragrance rather than their appearance. When the evening arrived, Marcus was uncharacteristically nervous. He checked his pocket for the ring box for the 10th time as the car pulled up to Zara's apartment building. You look very handsome, sir, his driver commented as he helped Marcus straighten his tie. Thank you, Robert, Marcus replied. Is everything ready at the gardens? Yes, sir. Everything is in place. Marcus nodded and took a deep breath before making his way to Zara's door. He knocked, and a moment later heard her open it. Marcus, she said warmly. You're early. I couldn't wait, he admitted with a smile. You sound beautiful. Zara laughed. And you look very dapper. What's the occasion? You said dress up, but wouldn't tell me where we're going. It's a surprise, Marcus said, offering his arm. Shall we? The drive to the botanical gardens was filled with comfortable conversation. Though Marcus found himself struggling to focus, his mind racing ahead to the moment he would ask her to be his wife. When they arrived, Zara gasped as they entered the conservatory. Marcus, this is incredible, she breathed. The whole place is lit up like a fairy tale, and the smell it's heavenly. Describe it to me, he requested, as he often did when they encountered something predominantly visual. The path ahead is lined with little twinkling lights, she began. They're strung through the trees and wrapped around columns. There are flowers everywhere, white roses, lavender, jasmine, and is that music? A string quartet, Marcus confirmed as the soft strains of Bach filled the air. I thought we could have a private tour of the night-blooming flowers. As they walked through the gardens, The carefully planned sensory experience unfolded around them, the music changing in different sections, the fragrances shifting from the spicy scent of carnations to the sweetness of jasmine, the different textures of leaves and petals that Marcus could touch. They reached the center of the conservatory, where a small fountain provided a gentle backdrop of flowing water. This was where Marcus had planned to propose, surrounded by night-blooming cereus, a flower that opens only after dark and lasts just a few hours. "The flowers here are amazing," Zara said, her voice filled with wonder. "Their large white blooms, like stars against the dark green leaves, and the fragrance is incredible." "Night-blooming cereus," Marcus explained. "They bloom for just one night a year, opening at dusk and closing with the morning light. Beautiful but fleeting." He took her hands in his. "Some might say that makes their beauty more precious, not less." "That's a lovely thought," Zara said softly. Marcus took a deep breath. "Zara, before I met you, I had accepted darkness as my constant companion. I had built a life I thought was complete. But then you walked into my office, and suddenly there was light in my world again, not the light of vision, but something deeper. The light of connection, understanding, love." He felt Zara's hands tighten around his. "You've never treated my blindness as a tragedy or a challenge to overcome," he continued. "You've simply accepted it as part of who I am. You've helped me experience the world in new ways, through your descriptions, your voice, your touch." Carefully, he reached into his pocket and took out the ring box, dropping to one knee as he opened it. "I can't see your face right now," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "but I can feel your hands trembling in mine. I can hear your breath catching. I can sense your presence in front of me, and it feels like home. Zara Williams, I love you more than I ever thought possible. Will you marry me?" There was a moment of silence, filled only by the sound of the fountain and the distant music. "Yes," Zara finally whispered, her voice breaking. "Yes, Marcus, I'll marry you." His hands shaking slightly, Marcus took the ring and placed it on her finger. Then he stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the love he felt. When they finally broke apart, Zara was crying. He could feel the tears on her cheeks as he cupped her face. "Happy tears?" he asked. "The happiest," she confirmed. "I never expected to find someone like you, Marcus. Someone who sees mirrorly, sees me when the rest of the world often doesn't look past the surface." "We see each other in the ways that matter," Marcus said simply. "And we'll keep seeing each other that way for the rest of our lives." As they walked back through the gardens, arm in arm, now engaged, neither of them could have predicted the challenges that awaited them on the path to their wedding day or the miracle that would change everything. News of their engagement spread quickly. Marcus's position as CEO of Thornfield Innovations made him a person of interest in business circles, and Zara's rising star as an innovative designer had garnered her own following. The announcement appeared in the business section of major newspapers, though Marcus had refused to provide a photograph, citing his desire for privacy. What the public didn't see was the private reaction from some quarters. The day after the announcement, Marcus received a call from his uncle Richard, his father's younger brother, and a board member at Thornfield Innovations. "Marcus, my boy," Richard's booming voice came through the speakerphone. "Quite a surprise in the paper this morning. Engagement announcements are typically preceded by introductions to the family, aren't they?" "Hello, Uncle Richard," Marcus replied evenly. "I wasn't aware I needed family approval for my choice of wife." "Approval? No, Richard backpedaled. "Just inclusion. The Thornfields have always been a close-knit family, and now I hear through the grapevine that your fiancé is, well, not what was expected." Marcus's jaw tightened. "And what exactly was expected, Uncle?" There was a pause. "You know how people talk, Marcus. The old money in this town has certain traditions." Traditions like segregation and systemic racism? Marcus asked, his voice deceptively calm. Those traditions died before I was born, Uncle Richard, or at least they should have. Now, Marcus, Richard protested, that's not fair. I'm just concerned about how this will affect the company. Some of our investors are traditionalists. Any investor who has a problem with my fiancé's race can withdraw their money immediately, Marcus stated firmly. I'll buy back their shares myself. Thornfield Innovations stands for progress, not prejudice. The conversation ended shortly after, with Richard making conciliatory noises that didn't quite mask his disapproval. Similar conversations played out with other relatives and business associates in the following weeks. Zara faced her own challenges. While her family embraced Marcus wholeheartedly, her parents, hosting a warm engagement dinner where they treated him like a son, already some of her friends were skeptical. I just want to make sure you know what you're getting into, her best friend Amara said over coffee one afternoon. Dating a white man is one thing. Marrying into one of the oldest, whitest families in the state is another. Marcus isn't like his family, Zara defended. He doesn't see the world the way they do. He doesn't see the world at all, honey, Amara pointed out gently. He's never had to witness how people might treat you differently when you're together. He's never had to see the looks, the subtle ways people try to put you in your place. Are you prepared to deal with that for the rest of your life? Zara sighed. I know it won't always be easy, but Marcus and I understand each other in a way I've never experienced before. He values me for exactly who I am. And what happens if he ever regains his sight? Amara asked. His blindness has shielded both of you from some harsh realities. If he could see me, nothing would change, Zara said firmly. Our connection goes far beyond the physical. Despite these external pressures, Marcus and Zara threw themselves into wedding planning with enthusiasm. They decided on a spring wedding to be held in the city's historic St. Michael's Church, followed by a reception at the Botanical Gardens where Marcus had proposed. 4 months before the wedding, something unexpected happened. Marcus's personal physician, Dr. Harrison, called with news that would change everything. Marcus, Dr. Harrison said, I've been in touch with a colleague at Johns Hopkins who's pioneering a new procedure for optic nerve regeneration. He's had remarkable success with cases similar to yours. Marcus gripped the phone tightly. What are you saying, exactly? I'm saying there's a real chance that you could regain your sight, Doctor, Harrison replied. It's experimental, and there are no guarantees. But given the specific nature of your injury, you're an ideal candidate. Marcus sat in stunned silence. For the first few years after his accident, he had pursued every possible treatment, enduring multiple surgeries and disappointments. Eventually, he had accepted his blindness as permanent and moved on with his life. Now, 15 years later, hope was being offered again. What are the odds? He finally asked. Based on similar cases, about 40% chance of partial vision restoration, 20% chance of full restoration, Doctor, Harrison said. It's not a miracle cure, Marcus, but it's the best odds you've had since the accident. And the timing? Marcus asked, mind racing. The surgeon has an opening in 2 months, Doctor, Harrison explained. Recovery would take at least another month after that. I know you're getting married in 4 months. The timing is tight, but it could work. Marcus felt his heart pounding. 2 months until the surgery, 1 month of recovery. That would bring him right up to just weeks before the wedding. If it worked, he would be able to see Zara for the first time on their wedding day. If it failed, well, nothing would change. He'd still be marrying the woman he loved, still building the life they had planned together. I need to discuss this with Zara, Marcus said finally. Of course, Dr. Harrison replied. But don't wait too long. This surgeon's schedule fills quickly. That evening, when Zara came over for dinner, Marcus told her about the call. They were sitting on the couch, her head resting on his shoulder as he explained the procedure, the risks, and the potential reward. 20% chance of full vision restoration, he concluded. Not great odds, but better than I've had in 15 years. Zara was quiet for a long moment. Then she sat up and took his hands in hers. "What are you thinking?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "I'm thinking that I've built a life I love in darkness," Marcus said slowly. "I don't need vision to be happy, especially now that I have you. But if there's even a small chance I could see your face on our wedding day," his voice caught, "I think I want to try." "Then you should," Zara said, squeezing his hands. "If it's what you want, I support you completely." There was something in her voice, a slight tension that most people would miss. But Marcus had become expert at reading the subtle shifts in her tone. "There's something else," he said. "What aren't you saying, Zara?" She sighed. "It's nothing, really. Just. I've gotten used to the way things are between us. You know me in ways no one else ever has, not by how I look, but by who I am. Part of me wonders if anything would change if you could see me." Marcus pulled her close. "The only thing that would change is that I'd finally be able to see the woman I've already fallen in love with. Nothing about how I feel about you would be different." "Promise?" Zara asked, her voice small. "I promise," Marcus said firmly. "Seeing you would only add to what I already know, that you're the most amazing woman I've ever met." 2 days later, Marcus scheduled the surgery for February 15th, exactly 2 months away and 10 weeks before their April wedding. The weeks leading up to the surgery passed in a blur of wedding preparations and pre-operative appointments. Marcus underwent numerous tests to determine his eligibility for the procedure, each one confirming that he was an ideal candidate. As the surgery date approached, both Marcus and Zara found themselves wrestling with a complex mix of emotion: anxiety, excitement, and even a touch of fear about how their relationship might change. The night before the surgery, they had a quiet dinner at Marcus's apartment. Neither felt much like eating, both too keyed up about what the next day might bring. "Are you nervous?" Zara asked as they sat together on the balcony, listening to the sounds of the city below. "Terrified," Marcus admitted with a small laugh. "Not of the surgery itself. I've been here before, Zara, pinning everything on a procedure, only to wake up still, in darkness. It nearly broke me last time." "What's different now?" she asked softly. Marcus reached for her hand. "You," he said simply. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I have you. That's enough for me. If I regain my sight, it's a bonus, not a necessity." Zara leaned her head against his shoulder. "I've been thinking about what it would mean, you seeing me, seeing everything, for the first time. It would be like introducing myself to you all over again." "No," Marcus said firmly. "I already know you, Zara. Your appearance is just one small part of who you are, and not the most important part." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, until Zara spoke again. "What's the first thing you want to see? If the surgery works?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "Your smile," he said. "I've felt it under my fingertips, heard it in your voice, but I want to see it with my eyes." Early the next morning, they arrived at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. The surgical team was ready, led by Dr. Samir Patel, the pioneer of the new procedure. "The operation will take approximately 6 hours, Dr. Patel explained as the nurses prepared Marcus for surgery. "We'll be using a combination of stem cell therapy and a new type of neural interface to potentially regenerate the damaged portions of your optic nerve. If successful, you may experience anything from light perception to full vision restoration." "When will we know if it worked?" Zara asked, holding Marcus's hand tightly. "We'll keep his eyes bandaged for 3 weeks to allow for healing, Doctor," Patel replied. "After that, we'll begin removing the bandages gradually, testing his vision response as we go." a nurse approached, indicating it was time to move Marcus to the operating room. "This is it," Marcus said, giving Zara's hand a final squeeze. "See you on the other side." "I'll be right here," she promised, leaning down to kiss him. "I love you." "I love you too," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite his racing heart. As they wheeled him away, Zara felt tears spring to her eyes. She had never told Marcus, but she had been doing her own research on the procedure. The success rates Dr. Harrison had quoted were optimistic. The actual published results showed lower percentages. She hadn't wanted to dampen Marcus's hope, but she was preparing herself for disappointment. The 6 hours of surgery felt like an eternity. Zara alternated between pacing the waiting room, making calls to update family members, and sitting with her eyes closed, trying to imagine what Marcus was experiencing. Finally, Dr. Patel emerged, still in his surgical scrubs, but with his mask pulled down. "The surgery went well," he reported with a cautious smile. "We were able to complete the nerve graft and stem cell implantation as planned. Now we wait." "So we won't know anything for 3 weeks?" Zara asked, her voice trembling slightly. "That's correct, Doctor." Patel confirmed. "The healing process takes time, and premature exposure to light could damage what we've repaired. Marcus will need to be extremely careful during this recovery period." Recovery was difficult. Marcus had to wear thick bandages over both eyes at all times, plunging him into a darkness even more complete than what he was used to. The pain was considerable, requiring strong medication that left him groggy and disoriented. Zara took a leave of absence from her design firm to care for him. She moved temporarily into his apartment, helping him navigate a world that had suddenly become unfamiliar again. Even simple tasks, like eating or bathing, became challenges when combined with the disorientation of the pain medication. "I feel useless," Marcus admitted one evening, 2 weeks after the surgery. The pain had subsided enough that he'd been able to reduce his medication, leaving his mind clearer but making him more aware of his temporary helplessness. "You're not useless," Zara assured him, sitting beside him on the bed. "You're healing. There's a difference." "I've spent 15 years adapting to blindness," Marcus said with frustration. "I built a life, a company. I learned to be independent." "Only temporarily," Zara reminded him. "And this time, you're not alone." The days crept by slowly. To pass the time, they listened to audiobooks together, worked on finalizing wedding details by phone. Despite the circumstances, these weeks brought them closer than ever, deepening their understanding of each other in ways neither had anticipated. Finally, the day arrived for the first bandage removal. Dr. Patel had explained that it would be a gradual process, removing the outer layers first, testing light perception, then slowly allowing more exposure if Marcus showed positive responses. Back at Johns Hopkins, Marcus sat nervously in an examination room as Dr. Patel carefully began unwrapping the outer bandages. "We'll keep the innermost layer today," he explained. "Just test for light perception through the bandage. Are you ready?" Marcus nodded, gripping Zara's hand so tightly his knuckles were white. "Okay," Dr. Patel said. "I'm going to shine a light toward your eyes. Tell me if you perceive anything." There was a moment of tense silence. I think I see something," Marcus said uncertainly. "A kind of reddish glow, like looking at the sun with your eyes closed." Dr. Patel and Zara exchanged excited glances. "That's excellent, Marcus, Doctor," Patel said, his professional tone not quite hiding his excitement. "That's exactly what we'd hope for at this stage. Light perception through the bandage is a very positive sign." The next week brought more tests, more gradual unwrapping of bandages. Each day, Marcus's responses grew more definitive. He could tell when lights were turned on and off. He could detect movement and shadows. 3 days before they were scheduled to remove the final bandages, Marcus woke in the middle of the night, his heart pounding. "Zara!" he called out, reaching for her side of the bed. "Zara, wake up!" She stirred immediately, years of light sleeping making her instantly alert. "What is it? Are you in pain?" "No," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "I can see light. The night light in the bathroom, I can see it glowing around the edges of the bandage." Zara sat up, fully awake now. "Are you sure?" "Positive," Marcus said. "It's faint, but it's definitely there. This isn't just light perception, Zara. I'm seeing light direction, knowing where it's coming from. That means that the nerve connections are working." Zara finished, her voice filled with cautious hope. "Oh, Marcus." The day they removed the final bandages, 4 weeks after the surgery, both Marcus and Zara were bundles of nerves. The procedure was scheduled for late afternoon, in a dimly lit examination room to protect Marcus's potentially sensitive eyes. Dr. Patel worked silently, carefully removing the last layers of gauze. "Keep your eyes closed until I tell you to open them," he instructed. "Even this dim light might be overwhelming at first." When the bandages were completely removed, Dr. Patel stepped back. "Okay, Marcus. Very slowly. Try to open your eyes just a crack." Marcus took a deep breath. This was the moment he'd been both longing for and dreading. What if it hadn't worked? Or worse, what if he could see but his vision was so poor that it made no practical difference? Slowly, he opened his eyes the tiniest fraction. Immediately he squeezed them shut again, gasping at the intensity of even the dim light. "It's okay," Dr. Patel said calmly. "That's a normal reaction." Marcus tried again, opening his eyes just enough to let in a sliver of light. This time, he forced himself to keep them open, despite the discomfort. Blurry shapes, colors, movement. He could see. Not clearly, everything was fuzzy and distorted, like looking through frosted glass, but he could definitely see. "I can see shapes," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Everything's blurry but—" Dr. Patel moved slowly into his field of vision. "Can you see me, Marcus? I'm holding up fingers. Can you tell how many?" Marcus squinted, focusing with all his might. "3, he said after a moment. "You're holding up 3 fingers." Zara made a small sound, half laugh, half sob. "The tests continued for over an hour." Dr. Patel confirmed that Marcus had regained significant vision in both eyes, still very blurry, still struggling with focus and depth perception, but far better than anyone had dared to hope. "This is remarkable progress," Dr. Patel said, unable to hide his excitement. "Based on these results, I believe your vision will continue to improve as your brain relearns how to process visual information. With therapy and time, you could regain up to 70,000, 80% of normal vision." Marcus could hardly process the doctor's words. He was too overwhelmed by the riot of colors and shapes around him, the blue of the examination room walls, the white of Dr. Patel's coat, the bright overhead lights that still made him wince. But he hadn't looked at Zara yet. He'd been so focused on the tests, on trying to make sense of his new visual input, that he hadn't turned toward where she stood quietly in the corner of the room. Now, as Dr. Patel stepped away to make notes in his chart, Marcus slowly turned in Zara's direction. She was a blurry figure, colors and shapes that his brain couldn't quite resolve into a clear image. He could make out the red of her dress, the dark brown of her skin, the black of her hair. But her features were indistinct, her expression unreadable to his inexperienced eyes. "Zara," he whispered, reaching out a hand toward her. She stepped forward, taking his outstretched hand, moving close enough that he could see her more clearly. "Hi," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "I can see you," Marcus said in wonder. "Not clearly yet, but You're beautiful, just as I knew you would be." Tears spilled down Zara's cheeks. "You can really see me?" "I'm seeing you more clearly every minute," Marcus said, reaching up to touch her face, combining his new visual input with the familiar tactile information his fingers provided. "It's like watching a photograph develop. Every second, you become more distinct." Dr. Patel cleared his throat gently. "This is extraordinary progress, but we need to be careful not to overtax your visual system, Marcus. You'll need to wear these special sunglasses whenever you're in anything brighter than dim light for at least the next 2 weeks. And we'll start vision therapy tomorrow to help your brain process what you're seeing more effectively." Marcus nodded, but he couldn't take his eyes off Zara. Even blurry and indistinct, she was the most beautiful sight he had ever seen. The weeks following the bandage removal were both exhilarating and frustrating for Marcus. His vision continued to improve daily, but the process was far from simple. His brain had to relearn how to process visual information after 15 years of darkness. Each day brought new challenges and discoveries. Colors were overwhelming at first, too bright, too vivid. Depth perception was almost non-existent, making it difficult to judge distances. Reading was impossible in the beginning, the letters swimming before his eyes in incomprehensible patterns. But there were moments of pure joy, too. The first time he recognized his own face in the mirror, even through the blur. The day he could distinguish between different flowers in a bouquet Zara brought him. The morning he woke up and could read the large print clock by his bed without leaning forward. Through it all, Zara was his constant support, helping him navigate this new visual world while still honoring the non-visual ways of connecting they had established during their relationship. "Close your eyes," she would say sometimes when he became frustrated with his visual limitations. "Remember, you don't need to see to know me." The vision therapy sessions were intensive 3 hours daily, working with specialists who helped Marcus's brain reconnect with his eyes. He learned to track moving objects, to distinguish shapes, to associate visual input with what he already knew through touch and sound. "Your progress is remarkable," his vision therapist, Rachel, told him after a particularly grueling session 6 weeks after the bandage removal. "Most patients take months to achieve what you've accomplished in weeks." "I have good motivation," Marcus replied, thinking of the wedding that was now just 4 weeks away. He was determined to see Zara clearly on their wedding day. As April approached, wedding preparations intensified. Marcus insisted on maintaining their original timeline, despite suggestions from family and friends that they might want to postpone to give him more time to recover. "The wedding isn't about me seeing," he explained to Zara. "It's about us committing to each other. Whether my vision is perfect or not doesn't matter." 3 weeks before the wedding, Marcus had another comprehensive eye exam with Dr. Patel. "The improvement is even better than I hoped, Dr. Patel said as he reviewed the test results. "You're currently at about 60% of normal vision, and I expect that to continue improving over the next several months." "Will I be able to see clearly for the wedding?" Marcus asked, the question that had been foremost in his mind. "Define clearly," Dr. Patel said with a small smile. "You won't have perfect 20/20 vision by then, but yes, you should be able to see your bride's face. You'll still need reading glasses for small print, and your depth perception will continue to be somewhat compromised, but overall, you'll be able to see your wedding." Marcus felt a wave of emotion so powerful it left him speechless. After 15 years of darkness, he would see the most important day of his life. What he didn't tell Dr. Patel, what he hadn't told anyone, was that he and Zara had made a decision. Though his vision was improving daily, he had yet to see Zara in perfect clarity. The combination of his still healing vision and the fact that they were often together in the dim lighting of his apartment Bright light still bothered his sensitive eyes, meant that he had only seen her in what amounted to soft focus. Together, they had decided that the first time he would see her in full clarity, in natural daylight, would be when she walked down the aisle toward him on their wedding day. It was a decision that filled Marcus with both anticipation and a strange sort of anxiety. What if his brain, still relearning how to process visual information, somehow didn't recognize her? What if seeing her clearly somehow changed the image of her he had built in his mind? He shared these fears with his therapist, Dr. Chen, during one of their weekly sessions. "It's natural to feel anxious," Dr. Chen assured him. "You're experiencing a fundamental shift in how you perceive the world. But remember, Marcus, you fell in love with Zara without ever seeing her. The visual input will add to that love, not change its foundation." As the wedding approached, Marcus found himself in the unusual position of being involved in visual details he had previously left entirely to others. He had opinions about the color scheme, the floral arrangements, even the design of the wedding program. "You've created a monster," Zara teased one evening as Marcus debated between two nearly identical shades of blue for the table linens. "I preferred you when you couldn't see the difference." Marcus laughed, pulling her close. "I'm making up for 15 years of not having opinions about colors." 2 weeks before the wedding, they faced an unexpected challenge. Marcus's Uncle Richard, who had remained coolly polite about their engagement, requested a dinner meeting with both of them. Marcus was wary but agreed, hoping that seeing them together might help his uncle accept their relationship. The dinner was at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place that thrived on exclusivity and tradition. As they entered, Marcus was acutely aware of the stares they received, some curious, some disapproving. With his vision still developing, he couldn't make out the details of people's expressions, but he could feel the weight of their attention. Uncle Richard was already seated when they arrived, rising stiffly to greet them. "Marcus," he said, shaking his nephew's hand, "and Ms. Williams." They sat down, and Marcus felt a surge of protectiveness as he noticed his uncle's gaze linger on Zara with an expression he couldn't quite read. The conversation was strained at first, limited to safe topics like the wedding preparations and Marcus's remarkable recovery. But as the main course arrived, Uncle Richard got to the point. "I've been thinking about your father, Marcus," he said, setting down his fork. "About what he would want for you." Marcus tensed. "My father has been gone for 10 years, Uncle Richard. I think what matters now is what I want for myself." "Perhaps," Richard conceded, "but the Thornfield name carries weight in this community. Centuries of tradition, of certain expectations." Marcus felt Zara's hand slip into his under the table, a silent show of support. "If you're referring to the fact that my fiancé is black," Marcus said directly, "I suggest you reconsider whatever you're about to say very carefully." Richard's expression hardened slightly. "I'm not a racist, Marcus. I'm a realist. There are certain social circles that may be less welcoming to your wife than you might hope. I'm merely suggesting that you both be prepared for that reality. Any circle that doesn't welcome my wife is a circle I have no interest in being part of," Marcus said firmly. "The Thornfield name might mean something to you, Uncle Richard, but to me it's just a name. What matters is the life Zara and I build together." Zara, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. "Mr. Thornfield, I appreciate your concern," she said, her voice calm and dignified. "But Marcus and I are fully aware of the challenges we might face. We've chosen each other with our eyes open, figuratively speaking, at least until recently." She smiled slightly at her own joke. Richard looked at her, seeming to truly see her for the first time. "You're quite direct, Ms. Williams." "Zara, please," she corrected. "And yes, I believe in addressing things honestly. Marcus and I have built our relationship on that principle." Something in Richard's expression shifted slightly. "I can see why my nephew is taken with you," he admitted. "You have, presence. The rest of the dinner passed more amicably than Marcus had expected. By dessert, Richard was asking genuine questions about Zara's design work, showing actual interest in her responses. He wasn't converted entirely. Marcus could still detect the underlying resistance, but it was a start. As they left the restaurant, Richard shook Zara's hand. "I look forward to seeing you again at the wedding, Zara," he said, and Marcus was surprised to hear what seemed like genuine sincerity in his voice. "That went better than expected," Marcus commented as they drove home. "People can surprise you," Zara replied thoughtfully. "Sometimes they just need to be given the chance." The final weeks before the wedding passed, in a blur of last-minute preparations and vision therapy sessions. Marcus's sight continued to improve, but he carefully avoided situations where he might see Zara in full clarity, sticking to their plan. The night before the wedding, they broke tradition and spent the evening together in Marcus's apartment, their apartment now, really, though Zara wouldn't officially move in until after the honeymoon. "Are you nervous about tomorrow?" Zara asked as they sat on the balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below a sight that still filled Marcus with wonder. "Not about marrying you," he said, taking her hand. "But I'm a little nervous about seeing you clearly for the first time in front of 300 people." Zara laughed softly. "Having second thoughts about our romantic plan?" "Not at all," Marcus assured her. "I want that moment walking into the church, seeing you walk down the aisle toward Meadow be something I remember for the rest of my life." "What if I'm not what you expected?" Zara asked, voicing the fear that had lingered unspoken between them. Marcus turned to her, cupping her face gently. Even in the dim evening light, with his still developing vision, he could see the outline of her features, the warmth in her eyes. "You couldn't possibly disappoint me," he said with absolute certainty. "I fell in love with you without ever seeing you, remember? Everything else is just details." Wedding days are notorious for their chaos, and Marcus and Zara's was no exception. Marcus woke early in his empty apartment. She would be getting ready at her parents' home, surrounded by her mother, sisters, and bridesmaids. Marcus's best man, his college roommate David, arrived shortly after breakfast, along with James, who had become a close friend as well as an assistant over the years. "Big day," David said, clapping Marcus on the shoulder. "How's the vision holding up? Nervous about seeing the bride?" "My vision's the best it's been," Marcus replied. "Dr. Patel says I'm at about 70% now, which is better than anyone expected this quickly." "And yes, he's nervous about seeing Zara," James added with a knowing smile. "He's been pacing since 5 this morning." "I'm not nervous," Marcus protested, then relented. "Okay, maybe a little. It's a big moment, seeing her clearly for the first time. Most grooms don't have quite so much pressure on that first look," David acknowledged. "But it'll be fine. From what I've seen of Zara, she's gorgeous." "I know she is," Marcus said softly. "Even with blurry vision, I can tell that. But it's not about whether she's conventionally beautiful. It's about seeing the woman I love clearly for the first time." The morning passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Marcus was meticulous about his appearance, wanting everything to be perfect for Zara. He chose a classic black tuxedo with a subtle pattern that his newly recovered vision allowed him to appreciate. As they prepared to leave for the church, Marcus took a moment alone in his bedroom. He stood before the mirror, looking at himself with a clarity that still felt new and miraculous. He thought of all the years he had spent in darkness, of the life he had built despite that darkness, and of the woman who had brought light back into his world in more ways than one. "Ready?" David asked, appearing in the doorway. Marcus nodded. "Ready." St. Michael's Church was a historic building in the heart of downtown, known for its soaring architecture and spectacular stained glass windows. As Marcus stood at the altar with David beside him, he couldn't help marveling at the colors streaming through those windows, creating patterns of light on the stone floor. The church was filling rapidly. Marcus could make out the shapes and colors of the guests, though individual faces were still somewhat blurry at a distance. He recognized his mother in the front row, elegant in blue. Next to her sat Richard, who gave Marcus a small nod of acknowledgement. On the other side of the aisle, Zara's large extended family filled several rows. Her father, a distinguished-looking man with silver at his temples, caught Marcus's eye and smiled warmly. The organist began to play, signaling that the ceremony was about to begin. Marcus felt his heart rate accelerate. This was the moment he had been both anticipating and fearing. The bridesmaids began their procession, walking slowly down the aisle in the deep purple dresses Zara had chosen. Marcus recognized Amara, Zara's best friend and maid of honor, her expression a mix of happiness and what looked like protective concern as she took her place opposite him. Then the music changed. The traditional wedding march filling the church, everyone stood, turning toward the back doors. Marcus took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly at his sides. The doors opened, and there she was. Zara stood on her father's arm, radiant in a gown of ivory lace that contrasted beautifully with her dark skin. Her hair was swept up elegantly, tiny diamond pins catching the light. But it was her face that captured Marcus completely, the face he had touched countless times but never truly seen. Her warm brown eyes, bright with emotion, her full lips curved in a smile that was just for him, the elegant line of her cheekbones, the smooth perfection of her skin. She was breathtaking. As she began walking toward him, Marcus felt tears fill his eyes, blurring his newly recovered vision. He blinked them away impatiently, not wanting to miss a moment of this sight. With each step Zara took toward him, Marcus's world seemed to expand. Colors became more vibrant. It was as if his brain had been waiting for this moment to fully connect with his healing eyes, to show him the woman he loved in perfect clarity. When Zara reached the altar, her father placed her hand in Marcus's. "You look beautiful," Marcus whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "You can really see me," Zara whispered back, her eyes searching his. "I can see you," Marcus confirmed, squeezing her hands. "And you're more beautiful than I ever imagined." The ceremony proceeded as planned, but Marcus barely heard the words. He couldn't take his eyes off Zara, drinking in every detail of her face, her expressions, the way her eyes shone when she smiled at him. When it came time for the vows, Marcus had prepared what he thought were the perfect words. But standing there, seeing Zara clearly for the first time, the carefully memorized speech felt inadequate. "Zara," he began, his voice strong despite his emotion. "For 15 years, I lived in darkness. I learned to navigate a world I couldn't see, to build a life that had meaning and purpose. I thought I had everything I needed. And then you walked into my office, and your voice lit up my world in a way I hadn't experienced since losing my sight." He took a breath, holding her gaze. "I fell in love with your mind, your heart, your spiritual, the things that make you uniquely you. I fell in love without ever seeing your face, and that love was complete and whole." Tears were streaming down Zara's cheeks now, but she was smiling through them. "Today, standing here, seeing you clearly for the first time," Marcus continued, his own eyes filling, "I realize that what I'm seeing matches perfectly with the image of you I've carried in my heart. You're beautiful, Zara, inside and out. And I promise to spend the rest of my life seeing you, truly seeing you in all the ways that matter." Zara's vows were equally moving, her voice steady despite her tears. "Marcus, you taught me what it means to be truly seen," she said. "In a world that often judges by appearance, you loved me for who I am, not what I look like. That gift changed me forever." As they exchanged rings, Marcus marveled at the way the gold band looked on Zara's slender finger. Another visual detail he could now appreciate. "By the power vested in me," the minister concluded, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride." Marcus cupped Zara's face gently, the gesture familiar from his years of blindness, away, to orient himself before kissing her. But now, he could see her eyes drifting closed, see the smile on her lips as they met his. The kiss was both familiar and new, the feeling the same, but now accompanied by the sight of Zara's face so close to his, her beauty overwhelming him all over again. As they turned to face their guests as husband and wife, a ripple of whispers moved through the church. Marcus could hear them, even if he couldn't make out the words. He knew what they were saying, commenting on the fact that his bride was black, expressing surprise that hadn't been evident before his sight was restored. For a moment he felt a flash of anger. Did they think his reaction at the altar his visible emotion at seeing Zara was shock or disappointment? Did they not understand that what they had witnessed was a moment of pure joy? But then he looked at Zara beside him, radiant and confident, her hand warm in his, and the anger dissolved. Let them think what they wanted. As they walked back down the aisle together, Marcus whispered, "You are so beautiful. Not just your face, everything about you. I wish I had the words to tell you what seeing you means to me." "You don't need words," Zara replied softly. "I can see it in your eyes." The reception at the Botanical Gardens was a vision of beauty that Marcus could now fully appreciate. The spring flowers were in full bloom, their colors vivid in the afternoon sunlight. Twinkling lights were strung through the trees, ready to illuminate the evening as daylight faded. As they entered the reception, the band announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, for the first time anywhere, Mr. and Mrs. Marcus and Zara Thornfield." The crowd erupted in applause. Marcus led Zara to the center of the dance floor for their first dance. The song they had chosen was "At Last" by Etta Jameisa Selection, that had taken on new meaning since Marcus's surgery. "At last, my love has come along," the singer crooned as Marcus took Zara in his arms. "My lonely days are over, and life is like a song." As they moved together on the dance floor, Marcus couldn't take his eyes off his wife. Each expression that crossed her face fascinated him, the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, the slight furrow between her brows when she concentrated on a dance step. "You're staring," Zara teased gently. "I have 15 years of not seeing you to make up for," Marcus replied, spinning her gently under his arm. "I plan to spend the rest of my life looking at you." Their bubble of happiness was briefly interrupted when Marcus's mother approached them. Eleanor Thornfield was a formidable woman who had maintained a polite but distant relationship with Zara throughout their engagement. "Marcus," she said, embracing her son, "the ceremony was beautiful." And Zara, she turned to her new daughter-in-law. "Thank you, Mrs. Thornfield," Zara replied graciously. "Eleanor, please," Marcus's mother corrected her. "We're family now." There was a slight hesitation before the word family, but the effort seemed genuine. As the evening progressed, Marcus found himself overwhelmed at times by the visual stimulation. After years of darkness, the bright lights, the crowd of people, the constant movement was sometimes disorienting. Zara noticed immediately when he needed a break, deftly guiding him to quieter corners of the garden where he could rest his eyes and regain his equilibrium. During one such moment, as they sat quietly beside a small fountain, Zara asked, "Are you happy with what you can see now?" Marcus turned to her, taking in the perfect picture she made in her wedding gown, illuminated by the soft garden lights. "Beyond happy," he said honestly. Really seeing you is the greatest gift I could have imagined." "Even though I'm not what your family expected?" Zara asked, a vulnerability in her voice that she rarely allowed to show. "You're exactly what I expected," Marcus said firmly. The woman I fell in love with. The woman I want to spend my life with. Nothing else matters." As the reception wound down, they said their goodbyes and slipped away to the waiting car that would take them to the airport for their honeymoon. They had chosen an oceanfront villa in the Moldavesa, place of extraordinary natural beauty that Marcus was now able to appreciate visually. In the car, Zara rested her head on Marcus's shoulder, both of them exhausted but happy. "So," she said, a teasing note in her voice, "now that you can see me clearly, any regrets?" Marcus turned to look at her, taking in the perfect features of his wife's face. "Only that I wasted so many years not being able to see your beautiful smile," he said softly. "But we have a lifetime ahead of us now, and I plan to spend every day of it looking at you and falling in love all over again." "Even when I'm old and gray?" Zara teased. "Especially then," Marcus promised, kissing her softly, "because I'll have the privilege of seeing every moment of our life together reflected in your eyes." As the car carried them toward their future, Marcus found himself filled with gratitude for the miracle that had restored his sight. Yes, but even more for the woman who had taught him to see with his heart long before his eyes could see again. In the end, that was the real miracle. Not that he could see Zara's face, but that he had found someone who saw him, truly saw him when he was in darkness. That kind of vision, Marcus knew, was the rarest gift of all. The sound of laughter drifted through the open French doors of the beach house. Marcus looked up from his book, smiling at the familiar sound. Setting aside his reading glasses, still necessary for small print, though his vision had continued to improve beyond all medical expectation, she walked onto the deck overlooking the ocean. Zara was at the water's edge, looking as beautiful as ever in a simple sundress, her hair longer now and blowing in the sea breeze. Beside her, spinning in circles with arms outstretched, was their 4-year-old daughter, Maya, after Zara's grandmother. Maya had her mother's warm brown eyes and infectious laugh. Combined with Marcus's determined personality, she was the perfect blend of them both, a living symbol of their love. "Daddy!" Maya called, spotting him on the deck. "Come see the castle we built." Marcus made his way down the steps to the beach, his movements confident and sure. The days of cautious steps and uncertain footing were long behind him, though he still sometimes marveled at the gift of being able to walk without counting steps or using a cane. "It's a magnificent castle," he declared, admiring the somewhat lopsided sand structure Maya and Zara had created. "Fit for a princess." "I'm the princess," Maya informed him seriously. "And Mommy is the queen. You can be the king." "I'm honored," Marcus replied, bowing playfully. Zara laughed, the sound as captivating to him now as it had been the first day he heard it in his office all those years ago. "Your daughter has been directing this construction project with very specific requirements. I think she might follow in my footsteps as a designer." "Or her father's as a CEO, Marcus suggested, wrapping an arm around his wife's waist. "She's certainly bossy enough." "I prefer assertive," Zara corrected with a smile. As Maya returned to perfecting her castle, Marcus took a moment to simply look at his wife. 5 years of marriage had only made her more beautiful to him. He never tired of watching her expressions, the way her face lit up when she was excited about a new design project, the focused look she got when working through a problem. "What are you thinking?" Zara asked, noticing his gaze. "Just how lucky I am," Marcus replied honestly. "To be here with you and Maya. To be able to see you both. Sometimes I still can't believe it." Zara reached up to touch his face gently. "We're the lucky ones. You taught me what it means to truly see someone beyond appearances, beyond first impressions. You saw me before you could ever see me." Marcus leaned down to kiss her softly, "And I fall more in love with what I see every day." Their moment was interrupted by Maya, who had come to tug on Marcus's hand. "Daddy, I need help with the moat," she declared. Duty calls, Marcus said with a smile, allowing himself to be led away to assist with the critical moat-digging operation. Later that evening, after Maya was tucked into bed with stories and kisses, Marcus and Zara sat on the deck watching the sunset over the ocean. The sky was painted in vivid oranges and pinks, the kind of spectacular natural display that Marcus had once thought he would never see again. "I never get tired of watching the sunset," he commented, his arm around Zara as she leaned against him. "Nor do I," she agreed, "though I'm looking forward to the stars tonight too." The forecast said it would be perfectly clear. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching as the sun sank toward the horizon. "Do you ever think about it?" Zara asked suddenly. "What might have happened if the surgery hadn't worked? If you hadn't been able to see me on our wedding day?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "I think about it sometimes," he admitted. "But I always come to the same conclusion, that we would still be right here, still be happy, still be in love. Because what we have was never about what we could see with our eyes. It was always about what we could see with our hearts." Zara smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. "That's a good answer, Mr. Thornfield." "It's the truth, Mrs. Thornfield," he replied, kissing the top of her head. As darkness fell, and the first stars began to appear in the sky, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. From their first meeting in his office, through the unexpected miracle of restored sight, to building a family together, every step had been guided by love that transcended the physical, love that saw beyond the surface to the truth within. In the end, that was the real happy ending to their story, not that he could see her with his eyes, but that they had always seen each other with perfect clarity in all the ways that truly mattered. And as they sat together beneath the starlit sky, Marcus knew with absolute certainty that this kind of vision, the ability to see with the heart, was the greatest gift of all.